Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Progressive Discussions. I'm your host, James P. Madonna of Mega Life 21, and I'm here for the very first time in terms of this particular show, Progressive Discussions, not the other shows about fermented beverages, but for the first time on this particular format from Southern Louisiana, the one and only Mr. J. Theriot, Ronald J. Theriot. Welcome, sir, for the very first time.
Thank you.
Okay, and as many people know, I like to go with the flow with this show, like ad-lib, like Jackie Gleason did on The Honeymooners. There's no rehearsal, there's no script, even though we do choose particular themes. And I think Jay on his shows, they kind of does that, but he has prepared educational information, which is really important.
I might do a similar theme on my other alternate channel. I have an alternate channel. You know, my regular channel is Ronald Theriot, Louisiana Beer Reviews, but
yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have an alternate channel called Anti-War, and so I might do a.
Okay, that could promote that, and also for you craft beer and fine wine and fine liquor enthusiasts, check out Alcohol Legs on Facebook. That is his, and the rock and roll group, classic rock.
Rock and Roll Club, yeah, Rock and Roll Club, yeah.
Rock and Roll Club on Facebook. Mr. J. Theriot is a very well-rounded, comprehensive man. Now, I would like to say, we were talking about speeches. I was very impressed with that speech that was mostly directed towards World War II. I think it was World War II by the legendary Charlie Chaplin. I listened to that entire thing, and it was very applicable even to today, and I was very impressed by it. And of course, other things I was impressed by, like Franklin Delano Roosevelt's second Bill of Rights concept that never really went anywhere. But you tell me about the speech that you were impressed with recently.
That is very controversial, and I might need to talk to you about that off air before we get into it.
Okay. Now, I want to say, considering the theme, I want to start off by talking about.
Although it was an anti-war speech, now just to bring that up, but
okay, it was different.
It would cause consternation for some people who are not open-minded, let's say.
Well,
okay.
I always like to be open-minded because you just never know. I mean, with all the I'm not a fan of organized religion, but let's say organized religion and people that do Bible study that are Christian, whether they be born again or whatever they are. What if, now just think about this, what if science was right? What if the human race with all its races that are here, what if we are nothing but one huge extraterrestrial experiment? What if evolution was induced by extraterrestrials? And that is why apes are not turning into humanoids, not walking out of the jungle today and evolving into humanoids. So you see where I'm going with this about having an open mind and being a critical, free thinker, you know?
In that case, that 50-year-old movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, would be even more of a documentary.
Yeah. Oh, I love the theme song. Ric Flair used it. Anyway, Nature Boy Ric Flair. Now, before we talk about war, the United States currently has possibly several hundred, maybe close to 1,000, and I could be wrong, but I think I'm right, military bases throughout the world, which they claim are peacekeeping forces. But when you have that many bases funded by taxpayers' money, and most likely it's going to be the middle class, of course, the peacekeeping forces are most likely just occupations for profit. You know, the industrial the military-industrial complex makes up almost 2/3 of the total American budget.
Yeah, well, you know, that book 1984 talked about how that they use newspeak, and peacekeeping sounds a lot better than, say, imperialism or projecting the empire. You know, that doesn't really that's not too sellable.
You know, like with Afghanistan, Vietnam. I mean, it's very possible that with politicians that are on the take, regardless of what political party they're from, and the military-industrial complex, it is very possible that there are certain natural resources in these countries where these occupations are that are being exploited. And what the media tells you is, of course, the media is controlled by the plutocracy or the oligarch. For those that are not familiar, go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary and please study your political definitions and learn about a plutocracy, which is a group of probably the top 2% of the wealthiest in the world, and the oligarch would be most likely the top 1%. They own the media that we know of, and they have to toe the line.
That's right.
They have to. They read from what is it? Teleprompters. They read from their screens, and they have to kowtow to the network management and station manager, and they do give you a lot of information. Don't get me wrong. Chris Cuomo on CNN and all the others, they seem very unbiased, like old-fashioned journalism, but they can only go so far. Now, MSNBC with what is that, Rachel Maddow? I don't watch that at all because they were really sucking up big time to Hillary Clinton in 2016, and you know, listen, no one should be above the law, regardless what political party they're from. The law is the law. The U.S. Constitution, I consider myself a constitutionalist. The U.S. Constitution is the backbone, and no one should be above the law.
Yeah, but most people are so partisan, they can't see that. You see, they say, oh, the only people that should go to jail are people in the other party. You see, so America is under the control of the two-party system. So I'm a Democrat, but I know that she should be prosecuted, you see. But
well, investigated first.
Or, well, yeah, of course, you know, but that would lead to a prosecution, I think, a legitimate investigation. But the Clintons have been known for decades of being involved in what we would call like mafia-like behavior, gangsterism, but they don't get any kind of negative attention from the Democratic Party, except for a few little inklings here and there. But for the most part, there's really nothing. And even Bernie Sanders, when he got the easiest pitch in the history of politics, the softest softball pitch ever, could have hit the ball out the ballpark. What does he do and destroy his own campaign? No one wants to hear about the damn emails. Well, immediately his whole campaign.
Well, Bernie Sanders blew it because he really broke the hearts of all those people that sent their small donations to his campaign and went to his massive rallies. And I repeat, massive rallies. His turnout was second to none. He really broke their hearts by instead of running as an independent and continuing to run, he endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, but that was when they started to believe that really it was rigged. You know, this whole thing is rigged. Here's a guy whose own party conspired against him, or right. Democratic Party conspired. But the theme of this is anti-war, or you were saying war. What is it good for?
Yes, and hold on, 7 lucky bells. And I am going to sip for the very first time ever, right in front of Jay Theriot, this blueberry wine. All right. I know it's not apple lickable to the theme, but guess what? I'm going to sip it for the first time anyway.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, I'm just sipping on some ice beer, and then I'll drink some water. My whole idea behind this video, and I didn't know what channel to do it on, but we, like I said, we could carry it over to mine at some other point. But was the whole idea of war, and that's why I call my other channel Anti-War.
Right. No, we're going to focus on that. Oh, by the way, the blueberry wine is outstanding, sir. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, that's good. And I find that a lot of the anti-war people are not truly anti-war when you start really digging into them. What I call them is anti-some war. You know what I mean? They're selective. They're anti-some war activists.
Right. Yeah, I like the word activist. I like the word consumer advocate too. But anyway, like Ralph Nader. But the thing is that we have Democrats that I don't call them progressive, even though they like to use the word progressive, but they're not. They're really moderate, blue dog, establishment Democrats that I call, I used to call them Democrats, but I call them Democrats because they owe big favors to they're corporate whores. I mean, I'm very open with my terminology, whether it be Republican or Democrat. If you owe big favors to those that give you huge campaign contributions, how could you really be working for we the people? The middle class, which is the backbone of the United States economy. They pay most of the taxes. They're the primary consumers. They are Main Street, mom and pop stores, small emerging growth companies, you know.
And I don't know how anybody who is a Republican can claim that their party is anti-war, but yet, of course, I don't know any Republicans who claim that.
No, I don't know any either.
And I don't know how, but then on the other hand, to be fair, I don't know how any Democrat could honestly say that their party's anti-war, because the history would argue strongly against that proposition. So there is no anti-war party in the United States of any significance. Neither the Democrats or Republicans, in my belief, from what I could tell, they're imperialistic and they're pro-war.
You know, my late talk show host, the Reverend Dr. William J. Eisenman, used to say, I don't know if he was correct. He might have been when he said this, but he said one of the reasons why the U.S. gets involved in so many nonstop wars is because they have to use up all the weapons that were made so they can make room for manufacturing new weapons, and then the profit continues. Now, you know,
that's a type of welfare program.
It's like racketeering, you know, like technical schools and colleges say to senior graduating students last year, hey, you want school credit? Be an intern for one semester. Oh, guess what? Companies get free slave labor for a semester. Then another bunch of senior students go and work for free. Yeah. It's a revolving door. It goes on, and it's racketeering. No matter how it's part of a kleptocracy. There's a new word that's used now. Kleptocracy.
Stealing.
Like we have now, which is a
kleptomania. Yeah. I started to come up with this concept of, and I wanted to do live hangouts on the Anti-War channel. I haven't done enough. I did beer, you know, like
no. Floor's yours. Go ahead, buddy.
The beer is just entertainment. You know, that's not serious or important. But I did a live hangout about 2 weeks ago called. It was about term limits, and it was live. And I let people comment, and so I plan to keep doing that. And as the channel gets bigger, then I'll do it more. And I don't want to do it too much on my main channel because it's going to alienate the beer review fans. They don't really want to see, you know, they don't want to see all that. So that's why I kind of like split the channels. And secondly, this idea I have is to like challenge the viewers and say, you know, instead of just putting a thumbs down, you know, why don't you be a man in a figurative sense tell me what I'm wrong about and come on the air. Even I'll even allow them to come on the air in a respectful manner and challenge me. You know, that's the way to debate. But I mean, of course, they have the option to put a thumbs down. That's part of the YouTube feature. But I'm saying that's kind of a weak way to do it. I would rather people to, and here's my challenge that I'm going to keep making for the next year probably. And I'm going to say, name any war the United States has been involved in, and I can give you a counter argument, or I'll explain to you why it was a bad idea. You know, so that's the challenge. And if I'm wrong, I'll say, come on the air and show me I'm wrong. But I don't think anybody's going to do it. So that's just a good. I think that's a good concept. You, not you, James, but you, the viewer, name any war America's been involved in, and I'll argue against it, because I did a video where I went through each war, and that was the theme.
Yeah, the goal was the Gulf of was it Gulf of Tonkin or Vietnam? The false information like that Jesse Ventura talks about
in 1964. Yeah,
that situation. You know, excuses to start wars. I mean, who knows? Maybe the United States government is in cahoots with the Taliban in the opium. In the poppy field cultivation for opium and heroin. We don't know that. Maybe that's the reason why the troops are still in Afghanistan now after all these years.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's possible. But you know what? There's a lot to be said about an individual like you and me that have the guts and the backbone, intestinal fortitude to go on video and live stream too, as opposed to these people that just do their little texting comments on social media, thumbs up, you know, right on, brother, thumbs up, thumbs down. You know, I mean, if you're going to debate somebody, at least have the balls to show your face.
And a lot of people, their idea of a debate is to call somebody a bastard and say they're wrong. That is not defending your position.
No,
okay? That is not the way. And this is the 2018 way of discussing and debating a topic. If you don't agree with somebody, you say, "Well, you're racist." You know, it's like a 3-year-old mentality. You know, let's get past all that. Let's get past calling everybody an anti-so-and-so or a racist, or, you know, get out there and debate the facts.
Right, or a misogynist, or like a lot of feminists play the gender card, call you misogynist if you say, hey, I was called a misogynist for saying that single mothers should not allow their daughters to leave the house dressed like prostitutes, and they all ganged up on me. Oh, you're a misogynist. I said, no, I'm realistic. What about college? What about colleges with these all gender restrooms where everybody's going in?
Oh yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean, pedophile. Hey, that's pedophile heaven.
Right. Of course. So,
yeah. All right. Back to the war.
You can call me a lot of things, but one thing you wouldn't be able to accuse me of is being politically correct. So yeah, I'm notoriously politically incorrect, and I'm not saying that as a badge of honor. It's just that's what you will be if you are going to fight against the establishment mindset and this group think.
You talk about the neoliberals that are the ones that are just as bad as the neoconservatives in different ways. You know,
the whole modern warped thinking is bad because it doesn't allow people to think. It's a paradigm that is like enslaving the mind of the world. Now, but my whole thing is, like you were saying, war, what is it good for? And we know the answer. It is, war is not healthy for children and other living things. We're not talking about if you get attacked, you have a right to defend yourself. Yes, people have a right to defend themselves. But if we look at most wars, it's the opposite. It's not that somebody was defending themselves. It was that somebody was aggressive. And then they try to get the population to think, oh no, but it's necessary. And so then they'll go along with it. Most people aren't going to go along with just naked aggression. Although in 2003, they sort of did. but I think that started to break down some of the monolith, you know.
Well, the last time the United States homeland was really threatened was World War II, because the U-boats were right off the coast of the United States, and of course Pearl Harbor was attacked.
Well, you know, I mean, that's the perfect war really to set people off, because that's like the untouchable topic. You can't, in good company, criticize what the liberals call the good war. But then, being a person with the veil lifted, I'm able to do that. And
well, another good war would have been what General Patton wanted to do, that Eisenhower put a stop to. He wanted to go straight to Moscow and get Joseph Stalin, who was terribly wicked. I mean, he had millions executed, and you know, he wanted to go right for the Soviets right after Nazi Germany fell, and we wouldn't have had the Cold War with Nikita Khrushchev and the Cuban Missile Crisis if that would have happened, probably. But they stopped them, and he didn't go after Stalin.
I know, and you can just. I'm going to go get some water. I want you to think of any war you want to think of. Of course, I'm the guest. I'm not I'm not running the channel.
Nicaragua.
Any war you want to think of, and when I come back with the water, I'll tell you what I think about it.
Okay. Okay.
You might find it controversial, but anyway.
Yeah. And I'm going to have a sip of this blueberry wine, folks. Well, as Jay is getting his beverage, I just want to say something real quick about social media groups. They tend to be comprised of cliques, where people are just interested in one subject, and I wouldn't even try to get some of the people from the entertainment groups over to a serious group. It won't work. Sometimes it does. I mean, I have some people that crossed over, but most of the time these people are in these cliques where they just want to talk about craft beer, or they just want to talk about golf, or holistic health and vitamins, or cooking. You have the foodies on my food and drink group. You know, I mean, sometimes they'll cross over if they have the same way of thinking that you have, but this is not we're like voices of reason. I mean, I was raised a Democrat and a progressive. My grandfather was a big JFK and FDR and Truman fan. Mr. Theriot grew up a Democrat, but we're voices of reason, and we're willing to call out somebody like a Nancy Pelosi or a Chuck Schumer or Cory Booker, who incidentally, even though he's razzle-dazzling you people out there, you neoliberals, guess what? When Cory Booker was mayor of Newark, New Jersey, he met with Chris Christie, had a private meeting, and right after that, he started closing many, many public schools in the city of Newark. He started closing them down. Now, is that the action of a progressive? I say no. And why is he kowtowing? Why did he kowtow to Chris Christie, who probably really wants to privatize at the time? You know, neoconservatives want to privatize education, so only the rich kids can afford to go to school.
Well,
go ahead. So
I hear. Let me see. Oh, I know it. No, I don't.
I could sing. War. What's it good? No, go ahead. No, yeah.
I just was an echo, but it'll go away. Sometimes these echoes pop up. No, I was not raised Democrat, actually. You see, I grew up in Louisiana, so it's a lot different world here. And at the time I was growing up, the Democrats were jumping to the Republican Party because of the Nixon Southern strategy and all of that. So
the Dixiecrats, like George Wallace, jumped.
When I was growing up, the mindset was that the conservative party was the Republican Party. So most of the Democrats, the white Democrats in the South, became Republicans. So that was originally, I was Republican, you see, but then I started to do studies and research, and I said, no, I don't want to be associated with that outfit, you know. So I became Democrat around, about 20 years ago or something like that. Yeah, about 20 years ago. So no, I wasn't really raised, although my parents were Democrats, but remember, when they registered to vote in the 1960s, you had to be a Democrat to vote, because what are you going to vote in? There was only one party. I mean,
right.
I mean, it didn't make sense to be a Republican because you're going to vote in a primary that no one's running in. I mean, you'd be voting in it, not a closed primary, an empty primary with no candidates. Right. So it didn't make any sense. Now there's two parties, you know. But you want to name the war?
Nicaragua, when Ronald Reagan was around, the Contras.
Okay, there's a good thing. Now, Nicaragua was like Vietnam in the sense that it was not its own war, but it was a battlefield in a larger war. And the larger war was what is commonly called the Cold War. Okay. Or I like to call it the World War Part 3. You know, you got the World War, I like to call it the World War Part 1, the World War Part 2, and the World War Part 3, which I think is still going on. I believe the Cold War is still going on. But the Cold War started in 1944, before the end of round 2. Round 3 started. And because the United States and the Soviet Union were already having trouble during the war, World War II. United States and Great Britain already getting into it with Russia. But so the Cold War had many battlefields, and one of the battlefields was Nicaragua.
Okay.
So if a person believes that the United States should have been involved in the Cold War, okay, fine. Support the Contras against the communists, the Sandinistas, fine. That's assuming you believe the United States should be involved in the Cold War. Now, I'm not going along with that assumption, you see. I'm not saying the United States should have been involved in the Cold War. I'm saying if you made that assumption, which is an assumption I do not believe in. My channel is called Anti-War. It's not called Get the Commies.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nicaragua, what can you say about it? If you support the Cold War, sure, help the Contras fight the Sandinistas so that you could block Soviet aggression in Central America. But that's assuming you support the Cold War, and I do not do that. I don't support that. I don't support entanglements in foreign conflicts.
Oh, like the prime directive on Star Trek, not interfering with other cultures and other nations and other worlds.
The United States of America does not follow that directive. Yeah. Not in my view. I
agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Nicaragua, of course, I would not support the Nicaragua adventure because I wouldn't support any of the other adventures. No.
No, I mean, now today it's not just war with physical weapons. Now we have a cyber war with hackers from mainland China, possibly Russia.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, mostly China. You got to watch them. You know, they got. Hey, you know what? The U.S. media does not mention all the advances that the Chinese have. I mean, they have a space program that's been going on, and
well, you see, yeah, because you see, the United States. Let's look at Russia and China. That's a good example.
Subsonic missiles.
The United States has followed a policy of aggression towards Russia and China for like 70 years. So they respond with aggression, like, well, if you attack us, then we're going to attack you, you know. So all this Russian hacking and all of this business is probably due to a response to aggression. The United States has not taken the position since 1945 of let China do what China wants to do and let Russia do what Russia wants to do. It's no, you're going to follow the boss, and we are the boss. Great Britain and America are the boss of the world, the self-appointed boss. And if you don't follow the boss, we're taking you down. Now, Iran and Mossadegh in 1951, they could take down somebody like that because they're small time. But it's not so easy to take down China and Russia. And then they asked the Chinese and Russian officials back 20 years ago or 15 years ago, I thought Russia and China were in a big conflict. Why are you doing joint military exercises? And they both started laughing and said, well, sometimes there's bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. Well, I believe about the thing about Great Britain and the United States because from what, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm almost sure that the main office of the Rothschilds is in London, England, and they're worth like, I think, over $100 trillion. They're part of the oligarch, and then you have the United States, of course. But for those, for those that are involved with Bible study, my ex co-host, who's deceased now, was an ordained minister, and he said United States and Great Britain are modern day descendants of Ephraim and Manasseh, and King David's throne today is in London. That might be true. I mean, for those that are into secret societies,
that's coming. Yeah, that a lot of that kind of talk goes back to Herbert W. Armstrong. And remember,
Plain Truth, Plain Truth magazine. I remember.
So he had that. He believed in that stuff, and David J. Smith over in Texas. So they have that theory, you know.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that kind of ideology, if you want to call it that, mindset.
Ideology is correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of like is similar to Lyndon LaRouche type thinking, because Lyndon LaRouche and them, they believe that the world is controlled by the British Empire, and what I'm saying, the British American axis, and that's the root of that's the nexus of the crisis. That's the spoke in the wheel.
Well, they talk about Zionism.
Yeah, right.
Like Netanyahu supposedly gets $11 million a day from the United States, and Netanyahu is playing the United States like a fiddle because he bashes us, you know, when he's off camera and all that. And
yeah, that's the Lyndon LaRouche theory, conspiracy theory, that the trouble in the world today is the British American axis, Zionism, and Freemasonry, and all of that working in
exactly. Secret society, the Bilderberg, Skull and Bones, you know. So.
Yeah, right. So so that's their concept of the world.
Libertarian.
Those guys tend to be anti-war too now. So you got to give them credit. They might be kind of loony and cult-like. They tend to be cult-like in the sense that you have to follow what they say, or they kind of go after you. And like the John Birch Society has a tendency to be cult-like in their behavior, but they are anti-war.
Yeah. Well, what do you call libertarians? Come in different forms. There are cult-like extremist right-wing libertarians. Then there are liberal libertarians like Jesse Ventura, you know, and more voices of reason. So it varies.
Yeah, and you can always tell what those people are about, because if you watch those kind of groups long enough, the ones that are fake, you can tell because most of what they do revolves around fundraising.
Oh, jeez.
You know, buying DVDs and going to a conference. It's basically, when it's about separating you from your money, then you can realize that they're not up. They're not on the up and up. And there's some of those guys out there that obviously they're in it for, you know, to make a buck.
Hey, Jay, it's like me talking about how powerful blueberries are as an antioxidant, and it protects the brain. Oh, and by the way, buy my products from my winery. I got blueberry wine here for you. Hey, how you get your antioxidants? Right. There's always a catch at the bottom.
Right. And the fake guys are all the same. They set up the big world catastrophe and get everybody scared. But then I've got the solution. And then they've got the table set up in the back where you can get rid of all your money to them. And it's like, come on, man, you're the same guy that was talking bad about the hustler preacher, but then you're going to give money to this conspiracy theorist who's going to let you survive on, you know, freeze-dried food. Come on, man, don't fall for that. You know,
and they all have bunkers. The catastrophe people, they all have these bunkers, and they all have this food, not realizing that if the surface of the earth is that radioactive, you're going to run out of food and fresh water way before the.
Yeah, they got the neo-Christian racketeers talking about the rapture, you know, and they take Visa, MasterCard, and Discover, you know, and it's like, man, come on, man.
Like the late Marshall Applewhite of Heaven's Gate. That was the most hilarious.
Yeah, that was a scientific death cult, you know.
That was like, and then what about Peter Popoff's Miracle Spring Water? The guy with the shoe polish hair, the black shoe polish hair, and his blonde wife, the Miracle Spring. And then you got the fake disabled woman in the front, and she passes out. He touches her. She passes out. She gets up and throws her crutches across the church and starts dancing. Oh, what a miracle! I'm cured. You know that's a plant.
Of course. So those kind of scams can really get people screwed up, you know. And then you got even more insidious and dangerous scams like Jim Jones, you know, and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
those ones, really, those death cults. But my whole theme, talking to you off air for this video, was the anti-war theme, and I think I'm going to continue that theme. I'm going to continue that theme with other political themes, like I did the term limits. I had a view about term limits, and then I was talking about, I mean, just any concept in history, you know, I could make a video about it, and I did a video about stereotypes, but I was on my main channel.
The War of 1812. In other words, the monarchy of England wasn't happy with the Declaration of Independence, so they had to give it one more shot. Is that pretty much what it was?
No.
What was that all about? The War of 1812.
Well, that's an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, the interesting thing about the War of 1812 is that the British were in this big showdown with France, Napoleonic France, the French Revolution, and then Napoleon came to power.
Wellington and at Waterloo was that last epic battle.
It was the climax. So the British are in a showdown with France.
Right.
So we're going to take them down, you see, because it looked like France might become a world power. And if you notice throughout history, anytime a country looks like they might become a world power, the British start taking them down because they don't want competition. They're the cops of the world, and we don't need another cop on the beat.
Yeah, so they rule the waves, like the song.
Yeah, I'm not defending Napoleon. I don't like Napoleon, but they were in a showdown with Napoleon. Doesn't involve the United States. But here's where the United States got involved, because they were trading with both sides. So the United States, mostly New England traders, they were supplying war material to France and Great Britain at elevated prices. So American industrialists, even in 1812, were making a lot of money with war material to go to Britain and France. Well, of course, the French don't want the Americans trading with the British, so they would attack American shippers going to the British colonies in Great Britain, and then the British would do likewise. Well, you know, as you know, Great Britain has a stronger navy, so they had the advantage of doing most of the stopping. So the British were stopping American ships on the high seas and searching them, making sure war material wasn't going to France. Well, the people in New England didn't really mind, because the profits were so incredible that even though they lost 1 out of every 4 ships, the money they were making off the 3 ships that got through was enough to cover the loss of the 4th ship. So New England was just making a fortune off this. Well, who was pumping up the war against Great Britain in 1812? Not the New England shippers who were getting their ships stopped. No, it was Southerners like Henry Clay. People in Kentucky that were pumping up the war to protect the freedom of the seas. Now, isn't it strange that a landlocked state like Kentucky would be a leader in pumping up a war against Great Britain? Well, the truth of the matter is they could give a hoot about the freedom of the seas. They had their eye on Canada and other British territories. So they used the argument to protect freedom of the seas as their excuse. They didn't care anything about that. They wanted to go to war with Great Britain so they could grab Canada and anything else they could grab and all the land west of the Mississippi. So they got this war basically staged so they could attack Canada and grab. Well, they failed because the Canadians did not join the U.S. to help fight the British. The Canadians were actually helping to fight the Americans. They didn't want to become an American territory. They were satisfied being British. So the Canadians fought against the Americans, and the United States actually lost. They invaded Canada twice and got beat. Well, you don't hear about that in the history books much because it's embarrassing. The British fought back hard. They invaded Baltimore. Then they invaded Washington, D.C. and burnt the city down.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Wasn't much of a city then. It was like a town, but they burnt down the White House, or burnt the White House. The foundation and the framework didn't burn. So that was not a war where the British were trying to take back the United States as colonies. That's just totally untrue. They didn't even want to fight the United States. They had no interest in that. They just the United States wanted to fight them, and that did not pass very easily in Congress. There were a lot of people in the House and Senate that voted against that war.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the war was so controversial that the New England states had a convention where they discussed the possibility of seceding from the United States. The New England states talk about secession.
You're getting a real hardcore education here. This is this is fantastic and very enthusiastic. You know what fascinated me also, Mr. Theriot, is the battle between the Appalachian people and the British Redcoats, where the Appalachian people used guerrilla warfare, like similar to the way the Indians fight, and kick the British ass in the when the British try to go west into the Appalachian.
Well, yeah, but now one thing about that though, a lot of the people in Appalachia, like East Tennessee and Eastern Kentucky and Western Virginia, they were Scotch Irish, and they tended to be pro-British. Yeah.
I wonder why certain Indian nations sided with the British in the past. I found that a little weird.
Well, because the British were trying to protect them, and they knew that if the British lost the War of 1812, that the Americans were going to come take it all. So the Americans were very aggressive against the Indians, and that was one of the reasons they had the war against the British in 1775, the American Revolution, because the British wanted to control white immigration to west of the Appalachians.
Okay.
And then they were going to let the whites have some land, and the Indians were going to have a lot of land reserved for themselves. And that's why they had the proclamation line of 1763. And the Americans were in an uproar because they wanted to go across those mountains and grab it all. And the British said, no, that wouldn't be fair. And so, you see, do you ever hear that on a 4th of July speech, that we had to fight Great Britain so we could grab the red man's land?
No.
No, you don't hear that.
I never heard it.
Do you ever hear anybody make a 4th of July speech where they say, the reason we fought the British so we could grab Canada? Do you know what the first thing the Americans did when they went to war with Great Britain in 1775? They invaded Canada. Now, that's a strange way to fight for independence, by trying to take over another country. That's a bizarre method of...
Now the Louisiana Purchase was probably one of the greatest bargains, except for Seward's Folly,
that was a fire sale. Yeah, that was a fire sale, because what happened with the Louisiana Purchase was that it was a Spanish territory, right? And the French made Spain give it to them in 1800. Napoleon told Spain, you have to give that to me. Well, Spain didn't have much choice because Spain was very weak, and they were trying to avoid being invaded by France, which actually didn't work out. They got invaded anyway later. But so Spain said, well, okay, you can have it, because it wasn't like they could keep it anyway. Well, then Thomas Jefferson got in a panic, you see, because He said, "Oh, France might try to build a big empire out west, and we'll never get that land." They didn't care if Spain had Louisiana because they know they could just take it one day. Spain's weak, so they could just grab it later. But France is a different story. They said, you know, France might be able to really stop us some kind of way. So they went to Napoleon and said, "How would you like to sell Louisiana?" And the implication was, it was an implied threat, really. You know, you could sell it to us because that's better than us just taking it. So Napoleon said, "Instead of you buying New Orleans for $10 million, I'll tell you what, I'll sell you the whole Louisiana for $15 million. And they said, "Okay, we'll take it." So, yeah, it was a great deal.
Now I watched the documentary about the Spanish-American War with, of course, Teddy Roosevelt.
A warmonger, if there ever was one. Okay.
The deal was, I think, according to the documentary, that Puerto Rico was supposed to be independent, not a colony of the United States, not a commonwealth. And honestly, to this day, I think the election should either be statehood or independence, not commonwealth, because they're enjoying the benefits, the social benefits of being part of the United States without paying taxes. But then again, what kind of taxes could you get out of a very poor region?
Right. So they get a double benefit. They get the handouts, and then they can still be like their own state, you know.
Right.
And then when they're fiscally irresponsible, they can come begging to the U.S. for help. They don't really want to be independent because then they would have to take care of themselves. But the United States stole that land from Spain, you know, and so did they stole Cuba and the Philippine Islands from Spain.
Well, the Dominican Republic, and they seem to be surviving well. The former British colonies in the Caribbean are surviving, Cayman Islands, et cetera, et cetera. I mean,
but Cayman Islands still is a British territory, yeah. Today, yeah.
I thought they were independent. Oh, they're not?
No. The Cayman Island, there's a bunch of British territories still down there. Bermuda.
Yeah, Belize. What about Belize, Central America? They were a British colony. Guyana, Guyana of South America.
Guyana is a republic.
Okay.
Belize was a British territory, and then in 1981 they became a self-governing country.
Okay.
But Queen Elizabeth is still the Queen of Belize.
Okay, Jamaica, is Jamaica totally self-governing?
Yes, but Queen Elizabeth is still the Queen of Jamaica.
And then you have the Netherlands, Antilles, Curacao, Bonaire, and Aruba.
Similar situation where they're part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but they're separate countries within, sort of like Puerto Rico, you know.
Okay, and then you have U.S. Virgin Islands, and then you have
actual territory, yeah, and the Cayman Islands and the Turks and Caicos Islands.
Right. Barbados was a British colony. Barbados.
It's a Commonwealth realm today, yeah. Queen Elizabeth is still the queen of many countries, but they have their own self-government.
Antigua, I'm not sure if that was Spaniard or ever
British. Antigua and Barbuda, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, the thing is that Puerto Rico. Oh, by the way, the victims of the hurricane, they still no one has come to their rescue. You know,
well, private organizations have.
Yeah, well, I mean, private organizations. But see, this is what I mean about the election. If the United States doesn't want to really, as a government, save the 50% that have nothing, not even clean drinking water, just, you know, let them be self-governing or become a state. You know, like my grandmother used to say, shit or get off the pot. You know, it's like it's really horrible what happened.
See, I don't think they would let them become a state because the Republicans control Congress and they don't want another Democrat state.
Well, what's going to happen is Puerto Rico will be
3 more electoral votes for the Democrats, so they don't want that.
They will be automatically Democratic voters because they will officially be probably more. I don't know if the right English grammar, more poor than Mississippi and West Virginia.
Oh yeah, way worse. Yeah.
Puerto Rico will be the poorest state in the union, and they will automatically, ipso facto ergo, become Democratic voters, like you said.
Of course.
And the Republicans don't want more Democratic voters. And I think enough Puerto Ricans that were very well educated in the United States can definitely run Puerto Rico as an independent Caribbean nation. And did you know that Puerto Rico is not either is not allowed or not encouraged to grow its own food? They have to import everything. That was part of the documentary.
Well, I mean, you're not going to get me to say the United States should have taken over Puerto Rico. I don't think the United States should have attacked Spain in 1898. The United States did some dirty things in 1898. They attacked Spain because they wanted their land.
Well, look at Cuba. Cuba, it's a huge Caribbean island. Huge. Yeah. They're very self-sustaining. They have been very self-sustaining with a pretty well-renowned healthcare system. But they have rich soil. I mean, you know, you're surrounded by water. You could grow so much, like the big island of Hawaii, where Mount Kilauea is blowing. Oh, we don't hear about that anymore in the media. I don't even know what's going on with Mount Kilauea. But anyway, what I'm saying is rich soil, self-sustaining. You can grow so much, not counting livestock. And you have solar energy. You have wind, you know, trade winds of the Caribbean, you know, so on and so forth.
To close it out, because I'm going to go walking. But instead of going back to saying, oh, I don't like, we don't have to go back 70 years because World War II is so controversial, although.
Let's talk. Well, say something about the current.
I was going to say we can go back just the last few years, you know, talking about anti-war. I'll just give you a quick rundown of my ideas from, let's say, the last 25 years. Okay, how about that?
Okay.
I opposed the United States involvement in the Yugoslavian war because the United States took sides in that war.
The Serbs.
Against the Serbs, who are, of course, supported by Russia, did it. The United States got involved in the Somalia conflict, which was insanity. And you know how that turned out so well.
Yeah.
The United States in the 90s and since and way before was involved in the Arab-Israeli conflict, sticking their nose in the middle of it, of course. On how that Arab-Israeli conflict affects the United States, I would love to know. But we stick our noses in it, don't we?
Oh, that Pinocchio nose is in there.
And I do not support that. The United States bombed Yugoslavia in 1999 in an air war, United States and NATO against Serbia. If you remember, Bill Clinton ordered that 3-month war.
Right.
They even bombed the television station, killed all the people in the television station in in Belgrade, because they promoted things that were anti-American. You know, like they took issue with the Americans bombing their city. So the Air Force bombed the TV station and killed all the people and said, "Oh, it was a mistake." Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, civilian deaths, collateral damage, as they like to call it, right?
Right. So that was an outrage, I thought. And then they occupied Kosovo and Bosnia-Herzegovina. The United States decided to keep bombing Iraq all through the 90s. The United States decided to invade Iraq in 2003, March of 2003, just because they wanted to attack them, apparently, because I couldn't figure out any other reason. Oh, they said because they might have chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction. Sure.
Oh, yeah, that they never found.
Of course, they never found them. And so the United States decided to, now when Obama came along and Clinton, they decided to overthrow the Libyan government. They decided to overthrow the Syrian government. They decided to overthrow the Egyptian government. The United States was involved with the war in Yemen. Now, this was Obama the anti-war Nobel Prize for Peace president, which even Obama said, I don't know why I'm getting this prize. Yeah, why? Because you didn't do anything to promote peace. And in fact, he got the prize right after he got elected. So he, well, I mean, what did he do for peace? He was just in office. So he was.
That was political correctness that he, if you get my drift, wink, that he got the prize.
Right. That was like virtue signaling.
Yeah.
It was sickening. He should have said, I don't want the prize. Go give it to somebody that deserves it. Don't try to placate me by giving me a false prize. I'm not your token Negro.
Well,
that's what he should have told the he should have told the Nobel Prize Committee.
Well, Ralph Nader was told by the media who interviewed him when Barack Obama was first elected that, well, there goes Ralph Nader's career. He shot himself in the foot when Ralph Nader says that Barack Obama is an Uncle Tom. And he said it loud. He says, and I repeat, he's an Uncle Tom. And the media, because they were politically correct, says, oh, Ralph Nader just screwed himself by saying that. Hey, open mind. Maybe Ralph Nader was right.
Well, I don't know about that terminology, but he certainly wasn't a peace candidate because his administration certainly did not. His administration never demonstrated an anti-war stance. Remember, he wanted to go to war against Syria, but the Congress said no. After that first so-called chemical weapons attack. Now here's Trump, and yeah, they are already talking to Syria about you better not attack the last bit of rebels. But the Syrians and the Russians are basically saying, you ain't going to do nothing anyway. We're still going to attack them. And I think Trump and them are going to say, well, we're just doing that for TV. We're not helping them. You know, we're throwing in the towel on Syria. And I hope Trump does throw in the towel on Syria because they should have never been holding the towel. You know what I mean?
You notice how SEAL Team 6 never attempted to rescue those Americans that were beheaded by ISIS? Interesting how that was just all allowed to take place.
A lot of that stuff is very mysterious and strange, you know. I mean,
well, I'm very much against the United States helping Saudi Arabia bomb Yemen civilians.
Yeah, I wouldn't even support it if they were bombing Yemeni soldiers. The United States, and I keep preaching this, can never find a war they oppose getting involved in. Yeah. They're like a heroin addict. The United States government's like a heroin addict. If they see war, they got to get involved in it. If a heroin sees junk, smack, he's got to buy it. And so, and the American people, you get these military people, and you know they want to stand up at the baseball game, and they're so proud, and they're like, "Yeah, I love my military." Well, yeah, but you want the military to get killed. I would contend that I love the military more than you because I'm trying to keep them alive. And
well, they don't take care of the poor veterans when they come back there because they're not coming back in a body bag. They're homeless, they're sleeping in cars. You know, it's like hypocrisy, you know.
Yeah, they got all kind of mental problems because they see all kind of terrible things in the war. Like in Vietnam, they got a lot of drug addiction, and all these Vietnam veterans came back messed up in the head, and now they come back from the Persian Gulf War and the Iraq invasion and Afghanistan, psychologically disturbed, and they have an extremely high suicide rate and domestic abuse and all of this. Yeah. Well, like you asked off air, what is it good for?
Absolutely nothing. Say it again.
Oh, look at the rain. Well, you see that hurricane is in the Gulf.
Oh, you got a storm coming? Oh, they're so refreshing, thunderstorms.
No, I mean a hurricane.
You got one of those. You know what? I mentioned the Yemen thing. That's very current news. I don't understand what's going on there, but I know I would say that big business is involved, especially with the kleptocracy we have now in Washington. But I know you want to batten down the hatches and do something.
Well, I don't think it's going to hit us. I'm not too worried about it. It's just going to be irritating with rain, you know. But I feel worse for people in Mississippi and Alabama. They're going to get more. It's mostly going to be a rain event. I don't think it's.
What's their Mississippi's Gulf Coast city is Biloxi, right?
Yeah, Bay St. Louis, Biloxi,
Pensacola. Like Mobile, Alabama, and Florida City, and Pensacola, Florida. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
But listen, people, you're really getting an education from Jay Theriot now. I mean, of course, you're educated on fermented beverages, on the other topics, but this is heavy duty because the man is very well educated. He's retired now, but you're really learning something, you jabroni. So you better soak in that knowledge when you watch this show. So
soak in the knowledge and read, people, read.
And read please go to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary and study your political definitions. There are too many people throwing out commie, pinko, socialist, this, blah, 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 progressive, liberal, blah.
I say all those kind of words all the time, but
they have different, some of them have different definitions. So that's what I'm saying.
I mean, yeah, but so I'm notorious for calling people communists, but I don't feel bad about that because I'm anti-war and the neoconservatives do not control my mind.
Or the neoliberals. You know, politically, hey, look, it's the neoliberals that created that stupid all-gender restroom in college university. It's the neoliberals that
I call them communists.
Yeah, the neoliberals are the ones that censor you on social media and says, "Oh, you're a misogynist. Oh, you."
That's a Marxist Leninist mindset, isn't it not?
Yeah, censorship.
They're like them. I always said that these people that you're talking about, I say, why do we talk about the Cultural Revolution in 1966? Because we're having one now here. These are the Red Guards here in America today.
Oh,
they march around and they denounce people. And if you don't agree with them, they'll beat you up, attack you. And they say they're fighting for liberty. No, they're not fighting for liberty. These are Maoists.
Listen, Adolf Hitler bashed the media and said, don't pay attention to the media, they're lying. Right. Joseph Goebbels of the Nazi propaganda machine said, if you tell a lie often enough, the people will eventually accept it as truth. You know, it's coming back.
Hitler said the media was controlled by, well, you know, the Jews. So,
well, you have to be like the old Cy Sims commercial we used to have, an educated consumer. You can't, but how many people are critical free thinkers? You know, that's another issue. And that's why I spend minimal time on Facebook nowadays, because I log in, and if I'm not getting hacked, I'm getting aggravated. So I do what I got to do, and then I log out. And I go to Twitter, where nobody aggravates me.
There's some other upcoming social media sites. Like I joined one in the last month, and a friend of mine, he got blocked on Facebook again. So he joined it, and he said, let's be friends on this new hangout. And I said, okay, so that might grow fast, because they claim they're not going to block people if they misbehave. You know what misbehave means? It just means whatever you want it to mean. So I think you're going to see the establishment social media get bypassed by more open.
Yeah.
Open.
Well, I don't think it's cool for a social media company to spy on your private messages and sell your private information.
Yeah, but they do it.
And they do it. And you know what? It's not just one company. It's not just one website. It's more than one. And I mean,
psychological warfare against people and everything. Yeah.
It's anti-constitutional. Oh, by the way, Edward Snowden finding refuge in Russia, was that during the Obama administration or GW?
I thought it was Obama, but I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, because I think he should have been pardoned, because he's a constitutionalist that was doing his job. Let's put it that way. You know what I mean? Like Robert Mueller is doing his job. I just wish that both sides, both political parties were investigated. You know. But anyway, I'm going to close out on this very positive show with the bosun's whistle. R.
Goodbye, folks.
Goodbye. It was great. It was really very powerful and refreshingly unique and different. I will talk to you for a couple minutes off the air. Jay Theriot, this guy, you learned something today, folks. You really learned something if you have the brain cells to absorb it and digest it.